On chairing the meeting?
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
All right, then I call this meeting to order. First thing is approval of the minutes.
Oh, roll call.
Roll call, excuse me.
You're fired.
Yep. A committee member Kane?
Here.
Committee member Goldman? Here. Committee member Cheesty?
It's Chasty.
Chasty.
Here.
Committee member Charles?
Here.
And committee member Tiedemann?
Here. Okay, now approval of the minutes.
I motion to approve last month's minutes, October 3rd.
Second.
All right, I've got a second. Then vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, by acclamation. All right, public comment?
You're efficient today.
You wanna-
Sure, I guess since it's not on the agenda, if I may. Thank you, Ann. So basically tonight represents the first annual Solano Avenue, North Berkeley, and Albany Trivia Night. It's at Sichuan style, most commonly known or formerly known as King Sin, 1699 Solano Avenue. There's a $500 grand prize provided by the Abrams Claghorn Gallery and roughly 50 questions that have been designed by the Albany and Berkeley Historical Societies. So we're really excited about that.
Thank you.
So if I go, I can get $500? I could use the dough.
Come on up, answer the questions correctly.
Perfect. So the SAA, the Albany Chamber, and the BID, as well as the City of Albany, have sponsored the holiday lights that you see decorated up and down Solano Avenue. Last year, the city gave the program thing $2,500. And we'll be looking, the costs are about. Okay, perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thanks for that setup there. So we're good. So anyway, so the lights will be coming.
They're not lights, technically, they're
Or garland, sorry.
Ornaments on them. I hope to work on the project with the company that we're using right now to try to fill in with some additional decor. Unfortunately, that company, our schedules just did not align to get that done. But I'm going to hopefully get them going for next year because we own the
Garlands, yeah.
combined with the work we did.
Oh, okay.
And this one company stores all of the decor for us, and then they just charge us for installation and uninstallation. So there's a little bit of an extra fee when it comes to the Albany portion, just because there's the banners that are up on the poles, and those banners actually have to be removed for the decor to go up, and then put back up after the decor is taken down. So.
So I have a question on that, although it's not on the agenda. When are we going to get lights?
We don't have consistent
Power
poles
poles,
with
right.
lighting or with electrical on them, and so the issue has been that we've had to look for decor that doesn't use electrical. Once, hopefully, years from now, when Complete Streets is finalized, that's one of the items that I actually requested, is to be sure that all of the new lighting poles have electrical access, so that we can add the lights. Because currently, we'd be able to do the Berkeley portion, and then just the below BART tracks portion, because those are really the only two places that actually have electrical to their poles at this point.
But in the past, we've been able to get the building owners along Solano to cooperate and plug in. I'm willing to do
It
it.
was too inconsistent, and it was a lot of work that I didn't have time to do myself, so.
You know, I don't mean to say it that way. Look, obviously, most of the work that gets done on these things, or a good portion of it anyway, is done by volunteers, including you. And in the Solano Avenue Association, we've wrestled with this in the chamber over the years, and I just think the city has an interest in this, and we should be able to get this resolved. It's not that much money, to solve this problem finally.
Well, I haven't seen anybody offering to cough up the bucks that would be needed to do that. So
Well-
it would be quite a bit.
So how about we make that an agenda item for this organization? Because you go to any other place during the holiday season, they look,
My biggest hurdle was just getting everybody working together so that the design was uniform. Rather than piecemeal of who, bid's doing this, and we're doing that, and the city's doing.
yeah, sure.
So the biggest hurdle was just to actually get everybody on the same page, starting to work together and getting comfortable with that relationship. Now that that relationship has been established, we can move on to doing more additional things. But all the stakeholders need to kind of come together and work on this together and agree on a universal plan.
So we're missing about 6 or 7 blocks, right? Of Solano, maybe 8,
From the bar track.
from Tulare down to the BART tracks.
That missing, would, that,
In terms of, yeah, yeah.
It would be from,
So there's no electricity in the Berkeley poles. What used to have to happen is they would find a business owner with electricity on the roof, which is usually there for signage. Oaks Jewelers, last time we did this, wanted $1 million insurance policy. The lighting people couldn't even get a hold of the people at 1760 Solano Avenue, which is the big office building that's right there next to Pharmaca. It became a real, not only do you have to find one place on the block that will provide electricity, then you daisy chain off of that with LED lighting, and getting a hold of the people who manage those buildings and own the property at the end became a real challenge. And in 2 cases, they just flat out said no.
So,
We don't
so
want people on our roof.
basically Berkeley doesn't have electricity either.
No.
So well, I mean, Albany has a vested interest in doing this. We should do this for,
well, and quite honestly, solar's come along.
And solar's come
Yeah.
a long way, yeah.
Like, if you guys want to add it to the agenda.
and a little bit of even a battery
I
pack.
could have somebody working with me on this. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Need a subcommittee,
So,
a holiday light subcommittee.
Or we can just ask the city administration to see this gets done. It's not a big deal.
Sounds like you've had
Hire an electrician to go out there and fix the problem, right? And the LED lights take almost no juice, so you probably could do it with batteries now at this point. Solar and batteries, so,
Especially now that the winter season doesn't have the rain that it used to. Solar
Yeah.
works really well during the winter now.
yeah.
yeah.
Yay for
But
sun.
it's also not, not only, getting the equipment, but also installing it, is who's going to install it. And I know, and store it, yeah.
so there is a possibility I could still work something out with the company
With somebody
that's
else.
going to do the install, but again, that's additional money that has not been approved for this year yet.
Yeah. We've been working on this project for the past, 3 years? 3 years, and we've, walked with one of the lady, or the consultant, yeah, and, we did a walk and realized, like, with some of the lights, because they're so staggered and there's no uniformity, we're really limited beyond probably the solar at this point to what we can do.
Okay.
Do you know who 4th Street uses for their lights?
Oh, well, Fourth Street has a really expensive, cushy bid that pays for all that. So it doesn't really matter if they spend 30 grand or 50 grand on holiday lighting. We don't have that here.
Okay.
So, and it's, you've got deep, chain pockets there, big box retail chain.
Oh, that's true.
So,
Yeah.
you're not talking about 10 people you're dealing with.
We can do it. We can do this. We put on a stroll with 250,000 people. We can do this.
Okay, move on to announcements. Just 4 quick things. 2 properties that are on the market and 2 businesses that have closed. The building at 1325 Solano, which currently has Avenue Yarns, that building went on the market in October. I haven't seen it on the commercial real estate listing, so I'm assuming it's in contract, and in that case, the property owner passed away, so the heirs are selling it. 632 San Pablo, which was Spillman Violins in recent years.
Did you say 632?
632 San Pablo. It was Spillman Violins. That owner retired. He was also the operator of the violin store. And so that's on the market as well. And then in terms of business news, you all probably know this, but the ramen kitchen at 1491 Solano closed. And there's a coming soon sign for the Duo Grill. And then 1369 Solano, which is Britt Marie's, they closed, and there's a sign in the window that says shame on sewers to open. And I don't have any more details about either of those two businesses, but just other than the coming soon sign.
Oh, we just ate there. They had a soft opening today, and
today's the opening
chamber will be
day.
having a ribbon.
Yeah.
And the chamber will be having a ribbon cutting there on Thursday, the 21st, that Sean probably doesn't know about yet.
Okay.
Cool.
Great.
And
There's
then
a new-
and then La Creme is officially closed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I saw that.
there's no more mystery behind that.
Yeah.
There's a new takeout that just opened, like maybe 1603 or 1601. So
It's technically Berkeley. Yeah.
It's the old Subway, yeah, and it's Berkeley. And it's like fresh food and twice as expensive as Subway, but got a lot of business
Good.
today. Yeah.
Do
And-
we? Oh, go ahead.
And the eyelashes and the place closed out too. Nice woman, but not much business.
What's going on with the Four Corners place?
They finally got a submittal into the health department last week. They're, without going into too much detail, the business owner who we're in close contact with had the design consultant who really wasn't performing, and so she had to pursue other avenues, but it's now on track.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
Moving on to presentations.
All right, so I'm very excited. Tom Southern is here. Tom is a local commercial real estate broker and an Albany resident, and he is going to speak to you tonight on just kind of the general state of the commercial market conditions in Albany and beyond. Yep.
So actually, I'll talk a little bit, but I prefer to just answer your questions, and hopefully you'll have some. But I'll just try to get us started there. So I work with a company called Newmark, Knight and Frank, and it's an international firm now. We were Cornerstone Carey Commercial. We were acquired by Newmark out of New York, and so we our competitors are people like Colliers International, CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield. We think we compete in that league now, and we do. And a lot of what we do in San Francisco is handle these big office tenants like Facebook and Twitter and those guys, right? And we're seeing a lot of those people move to Oakland Square. Some big leases there, and so Oakland, where my office is a very, very hot market right now for office, for apartments, and for retail. All three areas. It's getting very densely populated. There's low vacancies. Prices are going up. It's a lot of positive energy. It's an exciting place to be. And I live in Albany, and Albany is an exciting place to be as well. But what's driving the whole East Bay market right now, in my view, is things going on in Oakland. Okay, so we're very different in Albany. We don't really have an office market. We don't have much of a light industrial market to speak of. We're mainly retail, right, along Solano Avenue and San Pablo Avenue, and that's pretty much it. So in that area, I recently sold a building on Solano Avenue. I recently leased Edward Jones' second floor of Songs building. I recently moved on San Pablo Avenue to 743, a company out of a fitness group it's changing their name. They were Ice Chain. They're going to be something else, but they came out of Richmond. And so that's the kind of tenants we see. Restaurants, sports, fitness, anything where you need somebody to do something for you or with you sort of in person, whether it's leading some skill, doing hair, that kind of stuff. We're not seeing retail in the traditional sense. All that's been replaced by Amazon, in 600,000 square warehouses up in Richmond sell Amazon stuff. The big complaint, I hear from, I'm just talking the market here, and you guys, if you want to hear something else, let me know, is staffing is really a challenge to do. And it's not necessarily just minimum wage laws, even if, to pay rent, to pay staff, and to make a profit so you can come back and do it again the next day, it all has to work. And hiring and retaining staff is a challenge at rates that people pay. And again, this might even be above minimum wage. It's still a challenge, right? The other challenge small businesses face is, as you probably know, is anytime there's a change in real estate, there's a lot of cost potentially involved with code compliance, safety issues that come into play. So these generally can be worked out between landlord and tenant, but sometimes people are caught by surprise, and it can be a challenge for them. And then the biggest factor in that cost is delay in getting stuff done. Some cities have worse reputation than others. Albany has a good reputation for a city to work with in terms of not taking too long to get decisions made. It's an exciting time to be in the Bay Area, in my view, in the East Bay. There's an incredible amount of capital coming in here that people never thought they would see from, Goldman Sachs and all these big companies, and it's coming in here and it's changing. Technology is changing the way, I can say this, not just technology. Acme, we all read in the newspaper, Berkeley side, Acme Bread is going to be relocating. They bought a building, and they're leaving it. I never thought in my wildest dreams I would see Acme not be next to Kermit Lynch over there, just in terms of retailing perspective. So, there's all this new energy, new concepts, new technology, and a lot of old businesses that have been here a long time are having to rethink what they do, or just, give it up, do something else. So I brought some data. I can hand it out to you, some graphic stuff. I didn't bring slides, but I also have all this in PDF files, and if you give me your card or your Income Connect information, I can give it to you. One is about current things for lease in Albany and current things for sale in Albany. That's all listed on CoStar and LoopNet. Now, that doesn't mean it's everything, but it's a good chunk of the market. I've got our company's industrial and office market reports that really show vacancy rates, trends in vacancy rates, trends in rental rates, that kind of stuff, so you can see where the market's been and where it's headed. So you get a really sense of this broader market that you're a part of. And then I've got some data on buildings that have been bought and sold in Oakland, skyscrapers, and apartments being built. So maybe I'll just hand these to you, and then you guys can take them home and enjoy them, and then you can also ask me questions now, because I'm done talking. I'm glazing over. Right, so this is the apartments going on in Oakland. You probably have all seen something like this already. And I didn't bring tons of them, so because I'm going to send you PDFs.
Okay, great.
And then here's some East Bay industry stats. You guys got to share. This is the office buildings. These are all buildings that have been bought and sold in Oakland. This is all with capital out of New York primarily coming in other areas.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll give you guys this. This is what I did for.
They bought up most of downtown.
Oh, wow.
Oh, the Ask building went for $208 million. The Ask building, and there's no even Ask Jeeves anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So Albany Commercial, let's see, I know the Casper's and Table Tennis, both buildings are for sale still, correct?
Which one?
The Casper's building,
It just came on the market, the Casper's that I know of. Yes,
it's been,
the one next door to Casper's.
yeah,
It's been on the market forever. It was at $1.4 million, and they reduced it. Now it's down to $1 million. That's a building that's going to take a lot of there's a lot of preferred code
Yeah.
compliance in there, so whoever buys it's gonna get hit with a price tag fixing it up, and it's got no parking.
Well, what I'm thinking is, you know, if you buy those two lots together,
You could build something. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. And then also, on Solano, what's Little Surprises address?
1246.
Is that-
Live that little house.
Little shop called Little Surprises. It had some residential units in the
I
back.
just sold that.
Oh, you did just sell that?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
'cause I saw
1250
some
Solano
more.
Avenue.
Yeah.
I was 2 off,
'Cause I saw
4 off.
some loose now. Oh,
It just closed about a month ago. Less than a month.
And did you sell the other building?
No, he
next
took
door?
that off.
He took it off, okay. Because I was looking, I had a client who was like, I'm with Winkler Real Estate.
Oh, good, yeah, I showed it to you. Yeah, there's a lot available for to purchase and to lease. You know, it's a nice, nice selection. So, fire away, you know, grill me, ask me questions.
Marijuana.
And I don't personally like it. I did some when I was younger. Is that the question?
So I understood that there would be,
Oh, okay.
relative to your profession, I understood that there was going to be a lot of changes in the world and that marijuana legalization was going to change the world as we see it. What is your thoughts on that?
My thought is that it's become just like any other industry now. So for a while, it was a gold rush mentality, and we saw a lot of the highest rents paid and the highest prices paid for industrial properties was marijuana-related businesses. We don't see them in the market as much anymore. They're acting like any other business. You know, if they're growing weed, they're going, I don't need to be in Oakland paying top rents. I can go out to Stockton and wherever or further away, you know, pay in rural areas and grow it there cheaper and stuff. So they're acting more and more like normal businesses. They still have a lot of, I haven't done a marijuana deal, but there are guys I know who've done them. They still have issues about collecting and depositing money, about getting insurance. You know, title companies are now more willing to insure title on these buildings, but, you know, all of that's been a challenge for them. So even though it's legal, it's what I would call a quasi-legal situation. What we see in the industrial sector more now is what we call the last mile, which is companies like Amazon or other companies that supply, all these retailers used to be on Solano Avenue, you know, their goods are in warehouses sold online, and in order to speed delivery to their customers, they want to be within that last mile so they can do same day, you know, several hour delivery of important things. And that's where the action is in the warehousing and distribution industry. So if you'll see this report we did on the industrial sector, you'll see that did a lot of buildings of big warehouse, state-of-the-art warehouses, and still rent rates are going up and up and up at those. So that's sort of, you know, what we see in the industrial sector rather than the marijuana business. And I know it's still very controversial too in terms of co-tenancy and retail. A lot of tenants don't want to be next to it, just like they don't want to be next to a tobacco shop, you know, or whatever, so, or a gun shop. You know, there's certain things that don't quite have the chic appeal. So that's marijuana in my world.
Thank you.
Do we even have is there a marijuana outlet in Albany?
I don't know one.
Richmond.
No?
No, I think El Cerrito, Richmond.
That's Richmond, yeah.
We have a moratorium, I think, right? Is that expiring?
We have, in 2017, we did a cannabis ordinance. The council at that time said, we're going to prohibit it, but we want to wait and see how the state licensing works. So it's something that may come back on the front burner in the new year.
And even there, you know, you're seeing home delivery, just like, you know, Amazon does. You can order your marijuana online and have them deliver it too. So marijuana dispensary retailer is facing the same challenges now that a mainstream shoe store or whatever is going to face, right? Easier to get it, convenient to get it online.
So is Amazon delivering pot?
No, not that I know of. But I just use them as the example because everybody knows who
I
they are.
just asking. So what's available in Albany at this point?
Well, there's the lease section and the sales section. So they've got the data over there, and I can email it to you. You can go, there's a great website called LoopNet and CoStar, right? And you might have to pay a little bit
CoStar.
to get the full access a month, but it might be something the city wants to invest in, or you do, because it's like $35 a month or whatever.
I think LoopNet's free.
What?
LoopNet, I think, is,
If you get into the further.
So LoopNet is
Oh.
free if I, as a realtor, pay extra to have my ads show up for free. So LoopNet won't get you as good a market coverage as CoStar and LoopNet combined will do.
oh,
So it's better if you want the full data set to get LoopNet, the paid version of it. And I don't know their pricing, either, so you should check into that. But it's just the go-to place for commercial real estate now for knowing what's available, what's out there, what asking rents are at, so you can see.
So one thing you said struck me, that because of the pressure, and I'm assuming this money is coming from the East Coast, it's finance company investment money that is sort of being diverted from the stock market and looking for some other place to park. And that's been the main push for purchasing the larger buildings in Oakland?
In Oakland, that have been bought and sold many times, yeah. So, in my experience, and I haven't been there as long as some others, I was in publishing for 20 years before I got into real estate for the last 10 or 11. But institutional capital always avoided the East Bay, Oakland. And what happened is the delta between rents in San Francisco, when Silicon Valley moved up there, and Oakland was huge. And it was too tempting, companies moving over. And then various other changes occurred in society to make Oakland an attractive investment site. So all this money came pouring in because they're anticipating rent growth and employment growth in these big companies expanding. And indeed, what we see in Oakland is the bigger, people looking for bigger chunks of space, looking for, 200,000 or 300,000 square feet chunks rather than 3,000 feet. In fact, the smaller spaces are all going to WeWork. They're not leasing out there, and WeWork has gobbled up space as well. In San Francisco, they have 2 million square feet, WeWork has right now. And here in Oakland, I think it's about 280,000 square feet, So they're in a moratorium, they're not taking more, but a lot of the smaller people are going into WeWork or their competitors, Spaces or whatever. And then the other people are moving big chunks to these buildings that are being bought and sold, and the rents are going up and up and up. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, actually more than my question. I'm happy to have it.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Do you expect this to continue?
I don't know. Everybody, I don't.
We keep
How about
hearing
crystal
about,
ball?
some kind of bubble bursting, and the Fed dropped the rates twice in the last 4 months or so.
Well, what I tell everybody, people, is we've always had cycles. So everybody asks, when's the next downturn? How long is it going to be? How deep is it going to be? And I don't know the answer to that question. But you would think that at some point, the people who are the sort of the last in may get burned a little bit. It might not pay off the way that they're opening. But it has been a boon for the area. Some people think it is because there's a lot more jobs, a lot more, activity, and a lot more things being fixed up, and companies moving to town. And so, if you like that economic growth scenario, it's been, I think, a very, very positive thing for the
The
East Bay.
city's been also sweeping the deal for a lot of people, a lot of developers.
Oakland has?
That's what I believe I heard, is that there was some incentives or something.
Right after the Great Recession, there was incentives in Oakland, but not anymore that I'm aware of. No. What the bigger cities do, though, is they do have teams that work on bigger projects that smooth the process along more. But even some of the biggest developers have a really hard time, getting their permitting, getting through the city.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. So, But I don't know of any special, I don't work in that world, I work more on the leasing side, so I don't know that level of detail there.
But the leasing you say is jammed up. I'm not finding that in Albany.
No,
There's vacancies in Albany, and some of them have been sitting for 6-8 months.
yeah. So again, Albany is mainly a retail sector. It's not office and it's not industrial, it's mainly retail. And the pressures facing the retail sector are the new way of people, young millennials shopping, online purchasing, that kind of stuff.
I'm
So-
thinking specifically about office space. It's not filling up the way it normally would.
Which one is that?
Well, the one on 1600 Solano,
Uh-huh.
the corner spot's been vacant for at least half a year. Jerome Blank's old office sat open for a while.
Yeah. So I don't know specifically, I suspect that if you lower the rent, he'd get somebody in there, and.
Well, that always works, right?
Yeah,
Is it,
exactly.
hey, free!
That's one next to
Emmy's-
you?
Yeah.
Emmy Song,
They wanted $4,500 a month for a 1,400 square foot space, a building.
that's above market to me.
Yeah, and they've dropped it down to about 3,900, I
This is
think.
the one that was like a house.
It's a house, yeah, right next door to my building.
Yeah, so I would say that in Oakland, if you look at the data, you're seeing rents of, there's some brand new gorgeous buildings with tricked out for the tech world with everything, and they're going to be over $5, pushing to $6 per month, fully serviced rents kind of stuff. And then there's other Class A and B that's in the $450 to $520 range, and that's the bulk of the space in the office towers down there. Berkeley is a little cheaper. Downtown Berkeley, I just moved out of Oakland to Berkeley that I followed at $4 a foot for rents there on a gross basis. And it was always in the past, Berkeley was cheap, more expensive than Oakland. So that's kind of a flip because of the tech invading Oakland right now. West Berkeley is even to be a little bit less expensive, and Albany and El Cerrito are going to have to be less expensive than that. So I think for, you're going to be looking at $250 to $325 for a lease of an office space here. And I lease the second floor offices over at El Cerrito Plaza, and we're getting $225 full service a foot. We're 100% leased over there.
Would it,
What's the phone shop, the old phone shop? What's your take on that price?
Well, I love it. I love the space. I love everything about it. I think, he was pushing rents a little bit, and that's why it's vacant.
Yeah.
But he'll do a deal. It'll just gradually come down a
Because I
little
heard
bit.
that the YMCA was interested in it, but it was like 11,000.
I think he's probably lowered his price since then. Yeah.
what about the building that has Supercuts in it, the pharmacy,
That was
building,
for sale.
It's still for
Did
sale.
that go through? No, that.
It's still for sale.
for like $1.3 million or something?
I don't know the price on there, but it should be on your.
Yeah, I
data.
believe it was either $1 million or $1 million.
How many square feet is that building?
The problem is, it's got a lot of stuff that needs to be reworked in that building, and it's a historical building, so it could be.
Well, as far as, I'm curious if you know the answer to this question, because it wasn't historical until recently.
Until it was time to sell it.
You wait long enough.
I'm historical, is that what you're saying?
The McGregor's family that owns it too, and they have their ways of doing funny things.
I don't think they wanted this.
I don't,
They did not want it historic. It was a former tenant who actually filed the application for historic status with the state of California, and they gave it to him despite the McGregor family's objections.
Whoa.
So, but they're different categories of historic. There's like landmark, and then there's other, this is not a landmark, is it?
I think it is. It's a California landmark, yeah.
it was actually the first location for McGregor's.
It was his main offices, yeah.
He was the primary builder in Albany.
Yeah, and so I think the distinction goes that as a California landmark, it is subject to a historical review, but it is also not eligible for national status, so it really is a local status.
So how many square feet is it, do you know?
It's about,
5,423 square feet.
And it's split into
Oh, I thought it was residential upstairs.
No, it's two
No,
offices.
commercial,
Just offices everywhere.
But they're not wheelchair accessible, right? They're,
no.
No, not unless you're Superman.
Yeah.
Because we rented that, so we rented where Supercuts is now, we rented that space for a little while. The bathroom was so narrow and stuffed in the back. Yeah, pretty antiquated.
I don't know if Supercuts fixed it up a little bit? or-
Well, I don't know about the bathroom part.
They did tenant improvements to accommodate the business, so.
they got very high-tech windows,
Yeah, they do.
very high-tech windows.
Yeah, well, so there again, it's on the market. I know it's fallen in and out of contract a few times, and I'm not sure why, but maybe when they look, under the hood and check it out, maybe they're looking at some costs.
No, it's the McGregor family.
They don't want to sell it?
He does this with all of his properties, every single one of his properties, whether it's residential or commercial. They'll sit on the market for like almost a year. I think 740 Spokane's out on the market for like a year before they finally came to an agreement with selling it to someone. I don't know what it's just the way that they operate.
There you go. So, I mean, I don't know, I know Emmy leased her second floor to Edward Jones, which I think is great for the city of Albany. And that's, to me, the nicest building in Albany. And I wish we had more like that.
Which building is this?
I'm sorry,
Which building is this?
ISON.
So the corner of Key Route and Solano?
Oh, okay.
It's the sort of curved building. It's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
orthodontist in the ground floor, and now Edward Jones is going in the second floor.
I like my building.
Well, Robert, I'm sorry. You just got edged out a little bit. You put an elevator into that second floor, and we're gonna kick you up to the top. Okay.
Why isn't the guy next door selling? I mean, he can't do anything with that.
I
It's got to
think
be a
it's for
breeder.
sale or lease, isn't it?
I can shed a little bit of light on that. So it's owned by the husband and wife orthodontist dentistry practice. They had a proposal a number of years ago for a new building. It went through the city's process and it stalled out. They recently have gotten back in touch with us because they were victims of the fire on Ensenada. Their practice was in the building up the street. And so they're taking a fresh look at trying to figure out what they're going to do with their practice now that they've lost their Berkeley office.
Do you know how that fire started, by chance?
I don't.
I was nowhere near the place.
Smoking that, oh, anyway.
This is corner of Solano and Sonoma, and Ordway.
Ordway and so,
Yeah.
yeah.
This Macaulay Culkin was partying at that building not too long ago.
Yeah, they had these, the guys there were artists that did video games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an investor. He came in for their grand opening party.
Yeah,
We should have reported that in the papers, man. I don't know what.
yeah, yeah.
He showed up on AC Transit. All that money is gone.
Okay, well, it's been fun, and I'd love to meet you all and get to know you better at some point. And I don't want to cut it short if you have any more questions, but
How big is your firm?
so Newmark, Knight and Frank we were Cornish and Carey, which was a regional firm with about 14 offices and about 300 brokers. And then we were acquired, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago by Newmark, Knight and Frank. It's an international firm with about 7,000 brokers.
Wow.
And not just that, there's a lot more to it than brokerage. They have a global corporate services division. They have a workplace enhancements division that can, with architects and designers. So they're really, the business is becoming less transactional and more relationship driven. And that's what we're part of. So I just have a little small piece of it from a cubicle.
Fremont.
So you're the
Thank you.
CEO?
Okay, guys?
Thank you for spending your evening here.
So, if you want me to email you PDFs of any of those stuff, I can do it.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a card with me. I don't think I do.
Yes, please. Thank you.
If I could have your card, that'd be great too.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Tom,
Thank
why
you,
don't you give
sir.
me one of your cards?
I'll email you my email. Thanks.
Yeah, so if you email me or
Thank you.
through them if you like, I can email you any of these documents in PDF.
This is on, you got your email, I'll just email you. Great, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
I can give you the rapid-fire update on the San Pablo corridor study.
It's dead. Oh, sorry.
It's on holiday, or maternity leave, actually. One of the planners working on this. To refresh your memory, this is the Alameda County Transportation Commission's planning project, not ours. It's looking at San Pablo Avenue all the way from Oakland north into Richmond, going through all the cities that I'm sure you're familiar with. There are basically 3 concepts that they've been looking at over the last couple of years. And not much has happened, frankly, in the last 6 months or so, in part because one of the planners on it is on maternity leave, I think. The first concept is, and this started with the idea from the big regional plans, which are looking at trying to improve our transportation network and do something about congestion along the I-80 corridor. And one of the things is, how do we get alternative routes other than Interstate 80 for people to go north and east out of the Central East Bay. So that was the big picture. This is looking at trying to improve the number of people who can travel along San Pablo by bus primarily. But anytime you start talking about roadways, you start to talk about bicycles, automobiles, of course, and parking. So it's making that same trade-off that we always have when we start to talk about making changes to a road. This first concept is to create a dedicated bike lane and a dedicated bus lane. Yes, that leaves one lane for motor vehicles, or at places it chokes it down to one lane for motor vehicles.
Jeff, is that center strip that has the green and yellow strip, that yellow part, is that where the pedestrians would be catching the bus, much like a San Francisco island?
Yes,
So you'd catch a bus both ways on either side of that?
That's
like
right.
a BART stop almost?
that's right. That allows the bus to avoid having to go to the curb and get back in the travel lane, go to the curb every block or two.
So I'm just curious, do people climb through the window on the southbound bus, or how do they get on and off?
I'm not quite sure why, but there's a more
Or do the
expensive
buses
bus.
go backwards?
You could buy, you could buy a bus with the doors on the left-hand side, or doors on both sides. And it makes the buses more expensive, but it improves the efficiency of the bus operation.
So, and where do the bicyclists go?
The bicyclists, it doesn't really show very well on the screen, but they're against the
That's the item.
sidewalk. There's a
I
green
see.
stripe on each side of the sidewalk.
And so you basically eliminate parking along San Pablo Avenue, is that how this?
That's the consequence here, is there's less, if not any, street parking. Now, this is just a hypothetical block, right? They realize that there does need from time to time to be loading areas, and they think a little bit about Uber and Lyft pickup zones and so forth, but it's not going to have the typical 90-minute type of general parking zone. The second concept is the bus is still there, as you can see, and instead of putting the bicycle facility on this street, moving it to a parallel street. And so this then gives you an opportunity to have parking. Basically, you're swapping parking for the bicycle lane. In order to manage traffic, you might have this managed lane is like on Ashby Avenue today. When you go up Ashby at the end of the day, there's no parking on the right-hand side of the street, and then it becomes a two-way street for a couple hours, and then right at 6 o'clock, everybody can plop back down and park their cars. So that would be the concept here that would improve traffic flow a little bit, still have the benefit of the bus improvements and have a bit of parking. The third concept is basically not having that dedicated bus lane, and instead having the bicycle lane and 2 lanes of traffic. And then there are other things that you can do to help improve the bus service by giving them special signals so they can jump ahead at each intersection. They get a special light and they get to cut in front.
And the other ones don't have that.
That's right.
I think that's the best thing you could do for buses, is to be able to have them be expedited that way.
So they've done a lot of analysis of this, both technically about how the operations of the street would do, and they also did a survey, a pretty detailed survey up and down the region. And I thought I would share this with you just because, and I can email this to you if you want to dive deeper into the information. They broke it down by all sorts of different things, and I'll show you a few of these. But this I thought was interesting. I've highlighted, just to make it easy for you, what the highest percentages, or close to the highest percentages were. And what's interesting about this is the preferences change by city. And that makes that's part of the problem that the planners are having as well. In Oakland, Emeryville, they have no problem giving up street parking. It's not a big deal for them. You start to morph into Berkeley and then even more into Albany. Giving up parking is a bigger deal. Then
So I don't mean to slow you down.
yeah, no, please.
A, B, C, so those are options?
Those are the 3 options I just went through. Yeah.
In other words, they want a bike lane.
So A would be you get the buses and bikes. A is buses and bikes.
So what happened to the strollers and rollers? It doesn't look like.
They were there, they attended, they put in everything, but
And only less than 1 in 5. Less than 1 in 5. B, what is B?
B is the bus in the managed lane, the Ashby Avenue kind of model, where the bicycle facilities on the parallel street. And there are real advantages. There are some advantages to that because on the parallel street, it's a more comfortable place to ride your bike.
You're also not sucking all that exhaust.
Even with a bicycle lane, riding on San Pablo is a bit of a scary thing, particularly for people who are not super comfortable with it, or kids. There are lots of driveways. There's lots of weird stuff going on.
So how do they do the parallels? I mean, you don't have clean parallel streets all along the route, or they're going to set them up and make that happen.
That has to be figured out. In Albany, it's tricky because we don't necessarily. You go to the end of Adams and you can't go anywhere. Over here at the end of you come to, this end of Adams as well. You hit Buchanan, and then now, depending on where you're going left or right. So it is tricky. You're right. It's a little bit easier in some other cities.
I wonder, one thing that immediately came to me when I looked at the numbers in between Oakland, Emeryville, and the rest of the cities is I know San Pablo Avenue is an alternative for the freeway, where it doesn't impact Oakland and Emeryville as much. And so we would bringing San Pablo down to 1 lane in Albany,
You discourage a lot of people from using that road. I
Right.
think we should build a trench across that.
Actually, there are a few trenches across it. I'm sorry.
One across Marin, one across San Pablo.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
You know what I see, because I see it in San Francisco with that bus lane, that bus lane, is when it's prime time traffic and people are ready to go home, is they just jam through those bus lanes because it's wide open.
Yeah. All of this requires a lot more enforcement, whether it's the motor vehicles or the parking. Just the parking thing. It's bigger cities that have a bigger parking enforcement program. It's easier to make sure there's somebody out there to write the parking ticket right at 4 o'clock or right at 6 o'clock.
So give Alan a badge and a gun.
I'm halfway
Do
there.
we have to?
That's a good point, though, Sean,
Maybe
that
2
Oakland
guns.
and Emeryville don't have that same.
Yeah. And we have 1, maybe 2 parking enforcement people on staff, and it's hard to retain them. It's not the greatest job in the world.
What's C?
C was the bike lane. It was this one. So there's no dedicated bus lane. But it does have the bicycle lane.
So what's the status of this? Like, is it going to be open for comment at any point? Like where?
So it's about, I don't have the slide on this. They went through this public engagement process early in 2019. They did these surveys. They're at the status of trying to come up with a refined plan that responds to everything they're hearing, and they're hearing different things. So I think they're having a hard time figuring out how to try to keep everybody happy and make it work. And what I think really surprised them the most is how public opinion shifts as you go along the corridor. And so different cities have different perspectives on it, and that makes it really hard. So it's kind of we have not received any sort of final draft report. We've gotten the technical reports, we've gotten these survey results, and we're waiting for what would normally be a final recommendation, which is it's just a study. It's not like this is going to happen right away, but it sets the framework for starting to set aside some money, and if everybody loved this, it could happen in like 5 or 10 years. If people don't like it, then there's higher chance of litigation, and then it becomes a 10 or 15-year project probably.
So the way this sits now, have the bicyclists been interested in this parallel street business?
Yes, very much so. Certainly in Albany, the strollers and rollers have been advocates of the Canes and Adams, where we create essentially turn Canes and Adams into modified two-way streets so that it's safer for bicyclists to ride. Let's say you're coming up San Pablo Avenue from Berkeley, you hit Albany. It would be nice if you could just get on your bike, just go over to Canes and keep on going up San Pablo, but that's a one-way street coming towards you.
So if you made, in order to make it two-way, you'd have to actually eliminate a parking lane, wouldn't you?
I have a very detailed report I could send you about that.
You also have to eliminate El Cerrito Plaza.
Well, we haven't looked beyond that. What we would do is, what was proposed, and the city council accepted the report, but they had some questions and I think a little bit of concern, is create a one-way in, two-way out street, like you have in Berkeley in some places where there's a little planter that keeps you from going into a neighborhood, but you can get out if you're already in. The good thing about that approach is it keeps it from the whole street from becoming a cut-through for motor vehicles, but the bicyclists can ride around the planter or whatever it is in the middle of the street.
Are there any plans in any of this to have a dedicated street just for non-motorized vehicles?
That hasn't got, that's a very provocative idea, but no, that hasn't taken root
It
in any
exists. It's called
serious
the
way.
BART tracks. And with all due respect, unfortunately, I have to go.
I'm so sorry.
Okay,
Oh, you guys going to do trivia?
Yeah, good luck. Have fun.
sorry this went longer than necessary, but
Wait, it doesn't start till 7. What, are you going to go eat? You guys are going out to dinner.
People are lining up at 6:15.
Oh, wow.
I got to run too. I have a dinner to go to in San Francisco at 6:30.
Well, we lost our quorum.
We've lost form, but that's,
keep an eye out for building and fire codes. We can send you an email about them. We're still. Tom? Yes, we're working with Tom. Oh, good. I'll let him know.
We don't have any votes. I'm not taking.
Bye.
Should we?
no,
Thank
Can
you.
we? Should
So
we
you
just
guys
call it?
playing tonight? You guys playing tonight? Sorry?
We're in charge.
Should we? Hey Jen, I have some stuff in my car. You want me to get you that in the car, or you want me later? An hour later. Yeah.
Should we put, if we're not a quorum, should we put everything over till the next meeting?
Well, I'm actually interested in listening to the last of what Jeff has to say.
I just had a
Oh,
couple
sorry.
Because you ever get the,
Our meeting is a subcommittee now.
you ever get
Yes,
the,
we are.
you ever get the feeling that you haven't been invited to the party that's going to happen right outside that door?
This is a different breakdown. I thought if there was more time, I could go into it. But if you're interested in this kind of stuff, instead of surveying by where, city is surveying by type of user of the roadway. And, what jumps out here is business owners like it the way it is. And everybody else, just about everybody else is kind of split between A and B and to some degree.
Nobody likes C.
C is not hitting the sweet spot for
C was kind of like status quo, right? It was like,
It's kind of it's the compromise that everybody's compromising. So it's like the thing that Robert probably gets in mediations where nobody's happy. But that's where you land, and I think that's kind of where I'm seeing. So if you're a bus rider, you don't really like it because it doesn't improve your service. I guess if you're a bicyclist, you might like
The
it.
truth is, though, that, if we're going to be really honest about where we need to go with this, San Pablo Avenue would be best served if it was able to get people up and down. For example, if you could get to Oakland in, say, 15 or 20 minutes by taking a bus on San Pablo Avenue,
great.
everybody would be better served. And the problem with the business owners is that they tend to be the least progressive in terms of seeing where they need to go. You have to drag them into the future. And I'm speaking as somebody who represented probably more than half the businesses in Albany and love business owners, and I'm a business owner myself, but you really can't let them rule the day. You can't allow people that just graduate from planning school to come out and figure, oh my God, we got something to play with. But still, there's a way to figure this out. The idea of having buses that can trigger the lights so that you don't have to stop unnecessarily and get down to Oakland in 15 minutes it would make everybody be taking the bus. It would really make it work. Right now, you get on a bus, you're going to be an hour before you get anywhere.
And at least in this area of the AC Transit service area, my understanding is their ridership is actually decreasing a little bit, unfortunately.
Because of Uber and Lyft?
Probably that, and the service is it's a slow slog. I go to a lot of meetings in downtown Oakland, and if I take the bus, it's an hour, and if I drive, it's a half an hour.
Yeah, I would never take you can't rely on the bus getting you anywhere in time unless you have nothing else to do. If you're only you have one thing to do in the morning and one thing to do in the afternoon, but real people don't.
I take it from my house to my office, actually, almost every day.
But you're in Berkeley, right?
Yeah, and it's actually really fast. It's faster because Berkeley's made parking so onerous.
Yeah.
And I don't like paying for a parking spot because then I end up sitting all day long. So, I figure I walk more if I don't have a parking spot. So the bus, but I think it's because of Berkeley High School. I think it's a pretty well-traveled route because a lot of kids come from this area to the high school.
Yeah.
And the bus is filled with high school students a lot of the time I'm taking it. So I actually find it to be very pleasant, much nicer than driving. But yeah, it's like a 10-minute drive for me. Bus ride.
Is there one more? Oh, this is kind of obvious. But this is by how you travel along San Pablo. And, the motor vehicle drivers like it the way it is, and everybody else, by any other means of travel, wants something different.
I'm sorry, so A, B, and C what are A, B, and C here? Those
So
same
A
plans?
again is the bus and bike lanes. B is the bus and managed lane.
And-
C was that bike lane with no bus.
So nobody seems to particularly like C, but A gets a lot of kudos from pretty much everybody. Everybody who's moving on San
And the
Pablo.
bikers prefer to stay on San Pablo with the buses, which is interesting.
The
I would think the bikers would prefer to be off of San Pablo because
the
of,
funny thing about that, I always thought that, and when I've ridden a bicycle, that's my attitude. But I've spoken to a number of bicyclists, and they say, you pay for every foot when you're on a bicycle. You pay for every foot you have to. So you want to be on the main corridors that get you there in the most simple way. And they also, some of them are very dedicated to this idea of making it possible so you can commute. And the idea with the rest of the transit is you're going to make it less and less polluting. So if the buses are not polluting, and buses are not the danger for bicyclists in general, it's, cars and stuff. So if you have a very bus and bike-friendly street and not so friendly to cars, that would be very popular among bicyclists.
And with that bus in the center lane, and you're bicycling on next to the sidewalk, you're hopefully not tangling with them.
Right. You
Right.
know where they'll be all the time.
Right.
It does seem like it's the way of the future. I mean, cars are the major source of pollution, right?
I know.
Is that what we're hearing
There
now?
are dinosaurs like me who I'll die in my car. But
Well,
I'm-
we'll all die in, as long as you're in your car. How it's going right now.
I'll make my car more and more pollution-free. But still the thing is that even people like me, if you make public transit attractive enough and you make it so that that's where we put our energy and you make it possible, eventually I'll either hate my life or I'll figure out to ride public transit.
Well, New York is doing it. They're making a whole, what is it? The park is car-free, I think, all weekend, Central Park.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other major street they're making car-free.
Well, you can practically.
Oh, it was the one, it's the Crosstown Street, it's 14th Street,
Ah.
which is a major truck lane.
Yeah,
Just made it, no cars.
no vehicles,
Right, only buses.
buses and bikes and
Yeah.
scooters and.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of cities are taking really huge,
And
yeah,
we
with
could
lots
do
of
that.
objection. Let me double check if that's the right.
There'd be tons of objections, but
I think we're gonna
Solana would lend itself to being auto-free. Everybody would hate you for doing it, but, it would become a very popular place to take bus and to bring people in. bike and scooter.
Everyone would hate you, including some people who aren't here right now on this committee.
Yes, so I'm glad that, I'm glad I'm not the one who said it, right? But even as somebody who's, I think we have to do it.
I agree.
And even
Yeah.
though I don't personally, I'm not against cars, and I also think that the thing to do with motor vehicles is just to make them cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, and make it very expensive for people who want to drive polluting cars, and very rewarding for people who don't, and so that you can manage this whole transition.
Yeah, they have platforms now in New York, bus boarding platforms on this street where they've, yeah.
Well, EC Transit now is building on East 14th and International Boulevard of Oakland South and Lee Sanley and Hayward, something like this. So they'll have the center running buses. I'm not sure how they're treating the bicycles.
So that's East 14th, and so that runs all the way up to the lake.
Yeah, I think, I don't
I mean,
know
that's how they
exactly what the terminus of all this
That's
is.
how they say east. I mean, east
Yeah.
is east of Lake Merritt.
Yeah. So that will be our first East Bay example of how this works. Now, I'm pretty sure that roadway is a lot wider than what we have. That's the other challenge that's unique in Albany is the width of San Pablo in Albany is less than a lot of other cities. Like El Cerrito has a few more feet on each side.
So you'd have to give up the parking lanes. You're going to be a very popular guy, Jeff.
Right.
Don't,
All right.
don't sell him life insurance.
So that's that.
Thank you. That's,
Thanks. It's very interesting.
Very good.
I like I hate to say it, but I like Plan A.
You and everybody else?
Yeah.
It just, look at that, it's really forward-thinking. And it uses the middle of the street, and I think that, because we have this idea that we're supposed to put a tree-lined thing down the middle, and I think, we put the trees on the sidewalks and make the street function better, that would be a really good use of San Pablo Avenue. Yeah. So has our city taken a position on this?
Not yet. We don't have anything, we've had workshops and a lot of input into we haven't been asked to, we don't have a final recommendation to react to.
Can you bring that back to us and have us, I mean, I'm sure that there'll be people that'll be sticking me in the side for saying that, but we should probably consider doing something about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to solve these problems, you know, the global warming is going to be done
Right.
both locally, and it's going to be done on a earth scale. But most of the decisions are going to be fought in local planning and zoning and decisions like this, making it happen.
Yeah, speaking as someone who talks to a lot of those fresh from planning school people, you're saying we shouldn't let run wild. I'm inclined to support that sort of thing.
Letting them run wild?
Oh, yeah. And you get stuff like you get with Plan A and protected bike lanes and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It's your climate that we're working on, so yeah, we should let you.
Right.
You definitely want to get people with fresh ideas, because you get fossilized ideas, and we know what happens to fossils.
Right.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
guess.
The inaugural meeting of our subcommittee on, I don't know, the update on Simpapla Avenue corridor.
I love it. This is great.
And next month, we'll give you an update on the building code, the building fire, the one that we didn't get to,
Fire codes.
building fire code.
So what is it? Every time we get a new employee, we get more stringent fire codes? Is that how this works?
Every 3 years, the fire codes all codes get updated. And yes, basically all the bad things that happened in the previous 3 years kind of get built into the new codes.
Do they ever go back?
No.
I mean, it seems kind of crazy. It just gets more and more and more. You know, fire guys, they even put in things like that horrible fire retardant, and they had everybody putting it on kids' pajamas and putting it in furniture until eventually, the only thing that stopped it, this is people living in this horrible poison, the only thing that stopped it is the firefighters themselves eventually figured out that they were getting poisoned by their own stupid ideas, because it didn't stop the fires, it just created a more toxic set of fumes for the firefighters to have to contend with when they were putting out a fire.
I think the main thing that you should talk about as a full committee is what triggers new alarms in commercial buildings. And I think I touched on this a little bit last month, just really quickly, and we're still working on it with the fire department. So in a way, it's okay that we're not talking about it tonight because it's still a work in progress. But you know, the fire department will tell you if an alarm goes, they like the alarms because they're a monitored alarm, not just the kind of thing that beeps, but one that calls
The fire department.
you know, Bay Alarm, well, it calls an alarm company, you know, Bay Alarm or ADT or somebody, and they then call us, and our guys go out there, and if all that works correctly, they can get there fast enough to put the fire out in a minute or two. And, but that's expensive, and in some of these older buildings, it's kind of tricky to get in there and get it all wired. So it is an expense, but that, from the fire department's perspective, is well, the best thing they want is sprinklers.
How effective are the sprinklers?
Sprinklers are very effective. The sprinklers will put out the fire, or at least contain the fire to one room. The alarm is less effective but cheaper, and at least gets somebody out there so the fire department gets the call before someone drives by. And these things happen in the middle of the night usually, and somebody drives by and says, "There's flames coming out of that shop over there." Oh, it's too late at that point. So the alarm gets the fire department there before it's too late, but it's, in scale of damage, the sprinklers are great, the alarm is pretty good. And particularly if you have a mix of businesses or businesses in retail, or businesses, ground floor businesses and upper story residential, they really want to have those alarms. So that, because you could be asleep and you don't even realize that there's a fire below you.
Yeah, well, I regret when we did our building that we didn't put in sprinklers, you know, when we were doing it.
So there are some, by requiring a new business to put in an alarm system, in time where we have a little leverage over people. They need a new business license, we do inspections anyhow.
Does Berkeley require it?
I don't know.
I'm sure they do.
I
Yeah,
bet
you
they
think,
do.
you think so. What about El Cerrito?
Well, what we're proposing, what the fire department's proposing would be beyond what's required in the California Fire Code. It would be a local requirement, so it'd be more stringent than the standard generic city. Berkeley may, all these local fire departments kind of think the same way, so they probably are doing it. We're probably thinking about doing it.
So what you're talking about is some kind of new requirement for everybody to have these alarms that are hooked up to some kind of alarm company.
They probably have burglar alarms, right? Like, that's much more standard.
So most burglar alarms now have a fire alarm connected to it, so that would probably be just fine.
Right, you'd think that most people would do a burglar. Well, I guess Albany's really, actually fairly safe as communities go. So maybe everyone doesn't have a burglar alarm. I don't know.
Yeah, we had a burglar alarm, and it would go off at 2 or 3 in the morning, pissing off everybody in the neighborhood. And I don't know what was causing it. There was some problem. So eventually, the day after it would go off, there was one neighbor who would call me at 2 or 3 in the morning saying, "How do you like that?"
Oh, my God.
That's why you shouldn't give your phone number to your neighbors.
Wow. So you don't use it anymore?
We don't. We just stopped using
Not that we
it.
were planning to burgle your,
There's nothing there. I mean, you could. There's some rugs, chairs,
a few computers.
computers. Yeah. But everybody's got computers,
So we're going to do, we're going to put everything off till next time. Is that what we decided?
So,
Right, so. Okay, well, that's good.